trying to not think too much about what's under me. Oh, that's kind of freaky, actually.
Housing box.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, we are in the Caribbean. Hey guys, so that's it. I never really thought that we would see this day, but we are done editing our entire Atlantic Crossing daily vlog series.
It's been a big effort for you.
That was a lot of editing hours,
yeah.
But I hope that you guys enjoyed it. We received a lot of comments, we received a lot of questions, and we thought that today we would debrief with you our Atlantic crossing. If you haven't watched it yet, we published a series of 17 videos, one per day for every day that we crossed between Cape Verde and Martinique back in December. So we thought that today we were just going to share with you our thoughts on certain aspects of our crossing that you guys reacted a lot to, starting with the most controversial topic of them all. That one got a lot of ink pouring in the comment section.
Yeah.
I am talking about the way that we write the time in our videos.
It's very controversial.
There were a lot of people being very unhappy that I would use 1 a.m. and 1 p.m. or they would talk about 7 p.m. So from now on, we will write the time from 0 to 24.
I think a lot of Americans are going to complain about this.
Really?
Yeah, because we use AM, PM in the US.
Huh.
Can't win them all.
Okay, more seriously, there is one topic in particular that made a lot of people react on YouTube, and I think that it's important to talk about it because I don't think that a lot of people do. And it is the fact that you were extremely anxious on the day that we departed, even we departed, and certain events during the crossing also triggered your anxiety.
Mm-hmm. I just have anxiety. I'm so nervous for this trip.
But why?
I don't know.
So by now we're just a few hours away from departing, and Ryan is more anxious than I have ever seen him.
And to get that anxiety out of the way, I just want to go. Yeah, so I've had anxiety all my life. I don't think I really identified that I had it until we started sailing, actually. But looking back on it, a lot of the ways I function in life, I can identify that I've had these anxieties. Many men have anxiety, and a lot of times in men, anxiety manifests itself in the form of anger, yelling.
I'm at this, I'm not going anywhere, I'm that priority is and I'm stressed because I know I've got to go up that mast right now.
Which clearly is what came out with me and was shown in these videos. And Sophie and I talked a lot about the videos and my anxiety and if we should show that, and we decided that we should.
Yes. Anxiety in men is not a subject that is talked a lot about. I think that men are told to man up, which, I mean, what does that even mean?
I think it even more taboo with men coming from military backgrounds and doing more extreme type A things like maybe mountain climbing or extreme sports. That anxiety shouldn't manifest itself, and it does. And that can have a big strain on partner type or team type sports, like for instance us and us having a relationship on board a boat where anxiety, which is a perfectly natural thing that many of us have, manifests itself in yelling or screaming.
Which is not okay. Having anxiety is okay, but the part where you yell, I mean, and nobody's perfect, guys. Nobody's perfect. The part where you yell and take it out on your partner is not okay. But I think that in our case, we've really identified that you have anxiety, how your anxiety manifests itself, and how it gets triggered.
Right.
And a lot of people commented that I stayed really calm when shit hit the fan and Ryan was like all over the place and yelling.
Don't talk.
That's because I know how Ryan anxiety looks like. It doesn't mean that it's great. It doesn't mean that it's ideal for us. It's not something that you like. It's not something that I like. But I thought that it was important to include it in the videos because that's part of real life. A lot of people have anxiety and we need to have a much more open dialogue about it. Now, hopefully it doesn't look the same way for you. You have a much better crossing or a sailing experience. For us, that was reality.
Yes.
Which brings us to point number 2, and it is the time that it takes to adjust when you go offshore. A lot of time people will say, well, it takes 3 to 4 days to really adjust to being offshore when you do a big ocean passage. Has anybody ever told you what those 2 to 3 days to 4 days look like? I wonder if you ever get into the rhythm. I don't think that a lot of people have shown how adjusting looks like. It's this rolliness, you know, like yes, my legs are wobbly from taking yourself from point A to point B on the boat. In our case, it looked like a little bit of anxiety, a lot of sleep deprivation, fatigue.
Yeah.
And the first 4 days were an effort.
And I think part of that is it's going to be different in everybody. Sophie adjusted differently than I adjusted. And if the weather conditions would have been different, we would have maybe adjusted differently. And if we would have had crew, it would have been different. So everybody will adjust differently, but for us, especially as short-handed like we were, it does take a bit of time to kind of get in the rhythm and get going.
And on our particular Atlantic crossing, we had stronger conditions when we departed. We knew it. We had no less than 20 knots of wind at all time. We had waves coming from behind and swell coming from the beam, which made the boat really, really, really rolly. It was really taxing on the body. But you were very supportive.
Yeah, I tried to let you sleep whenever I
Yes.
could. So if I felt rested, I'd give you a few more hours of sleep, and that
Yes.
helped get us going.
When you shorthand, there is going to be that period where your sleep pattern needs to adjust. And one thing that I've done that have really helped me, other than you just helping me and letting me sleep, was to eat. Just eat as much as you can. Eat and drink water. Eat and drink water. One thing that a lot of people forget when they sail at night is that you need to eat a meal at night. Otherwise, you're going to be very, very tired and you're going to want to sleep. Do you want to talk about that pattern, our watch schedule?
Yeah, so we started with a watch schedule doing 4 on, 4 off, and we determined really quickly that that was going to get a little taxing for us. So Sophie came up with the idea of us doing 6 on, 6 off, so essentially doing 2 watches a day, and that would just mean 1 watch at night. And what we ended up doing was Sophie would take from 8 till 2, and usually for the first 3 hours of that she'd be wide awake because it was still early in the evening, and then the last 3 hours it would be kind of 10-minute cat naps with an alarm, and then you wake up and check around, and then you can cat nap again.
Yes.
And then I would do the same, but kind of in reverse, cat nap from about 2 till 5, and then the sun would start coming up, and then I would be awake. And then usually both of us, while we'd be on watch for 6 hours during the day, we'd both kind of be up and down and
taking naps and
Yeah.
cooking and cleaning. And I think that a lot of people reacted to the fact that they saw us not looking at the instrument, but laying with our heads backwards.
that's the most comfortable
Yes.
seating position.
Which
on
is
the
super
boat.
important. The camera didn't run much at night because there is no light for me to film. But every time that we were on watch, every 10 to 15 minutes, we do a full 360 of the horizon and we look at the instrument. So yeah, we are on active watch, even though we take those little cat naps. Somebody asked about seasickness. Were you seasick?
Not really, no.
Not
I don't-
really?
I don't get seasick.
When we started crossing the Atlantic, I was aware of the fact that I needed to prevent seasickness at all costs. So I had a full patch of scopoderm behind my ear for the
No
first
seasick glasses.
3 days. I had a patch of scopoderm on for the first 3 days. Then I reduced it to half a patch for 2 days, and then I completely removed it. I had zero seasickness the entire trip. It was fantastic. Okay, so in the same line as fatigue and seasickness and watch schedule, a lot of people were like, why did you guys not take crew?
Well, my answer for that is I always wanted to do this passage shorthanded with just Sophie and I, because when I got this idea, a lot of people actually told us, you can't do it with 2, you should always have a minimum 3 and 4, and I was like, you can do it with 2.
People do it alone.
People do it alone.
Okay, the point is we were maybe not the most experienced sailors out there.
But we did it. Now, would I do it again? The answer is no. I would probably not do an ocean crossing again shorthanded. And really, it's just to enhance safety and increase the amount of hours we get to sleep. So we did get to experience traveling with crew a couple times this year, and that was really nice because we did get to sleep and we had some extra hands to help out on the boat.
Yes.
So I would prefer to do that in the future for longer ocean crossings.
With that said, I didn't want to take crew because I had never met someone who I felt confident enough that we could spend 2 to 3 weeks together on board, operating the boat across the Atlantic. Until we met Jules and Tani, who crossed with us between Lanzarote and Cape Verde. They were amazing. We missed them a lot. How's that spotted dick? But by the time we asked them if they wanted to come, it was already too late. They had plans for Christmas, so that didn't really happen. It's okay. With that said, having crew is not a guarantee that crew is going to work. We've also had experience with crew when they were incapacitated and we had to double hand again.
Not their fault.
Not their fault. So yeah, and now we know that we can cross an ocean just the two of us. It is taxing, it is tiring, it is definitely an endurance race, but it's possible.
We did it. It was fine. Would I do it again? Probably not.
No.
If we needed to do it again, could we? Yes. Next topic.
All right, now we're going to talk about another topic that was heavily commented, which is our twin headsail setup.
A lot of people used to sail across the Atlantic with twin headsails, but that's kind of fallen out of fashion, especially nowadays with more advanced sails like spinnakers or special downwind sails like parasailers. So we opted to go this route. For me, it was an issue of not flying the mainsail and therefore causing chafe, and also eliminating the potential for an accidental jibe. And then just keeping it simple, having everything on one furler that would, in theory, be easy to reef and let out.
And also money.
It was a cheap setup for us.
We could have invested in a downwind sail, which would have cost us multiple $1,000s, or buy a $500 whisker pole to mount our second Genoa, our old Genoa, on our double track on our furler, and that was an easy solution. What do you think about that solution now that we've crossed the
Very
Atlantic?
opinionated about this. So when the conditions are right, and I mean that by the winds are downwind from you and they're moderate to strong, the setup works great. So we were actually in pretty strong conditions coming down from Morocco to Lanzarote, and the setup worked awesome. Had so much confidence in it.
Yes.
Where it didn't work is when the winds start going more off on the beam and they become light. The sails are very heavy. It puts a lot of weight on the rig. So when the winds become light, it's very hard just to keep those sails full. And if the winds go on the beam, you need to pull one sail on top of the other, which creates chafe and also a lot of weight. So that just situation doesn't work.
No.
On top of it, for us, we had both sails on a single furler. And in theory, that's great. So when the winds were strong, we could easily reef the sails together.
Reefing was easy.
If we wanted to only fly one sail, we would have to drop both sails and put up the other sail. And for two people on a boat in the middle of the ocean, that's a big sail change to have happened. And we were aware of that when we signed up for this. I would say it worked when the conditions were right for it, and it was challenging, and I felt personally a little trapped with that sail configuration when the conditions weren't right for it.
Yes.
So if I were going to fly that in the future, the only way I would fly it is if I had two stays with independent furlers and a sail on each furler.
A lot of people commented that it's a good setup, but why not buy another furler and put it on the second furler?
Yeah.
Money. Things cost money that we don't have. Again, one of the reasons we chose this setup is because it was cheap, and adding another furler and another stay would have been an expense that we just could not afford.
If we would have had the same winds for that we had the first week, the whole trip, we would have just flown across the Atlantic, and it would have been great.
We were making amazing speed. We were doing up to 8-9 knots on the first week, and then the wind died, and that's when we started to feel very limited.
On the topic, though, of twin headsails, a few people commented about the fact that we didn't have an after guy rigged on our poles, and that's correct. And I'll be the first to admit, I knew about fore guys and after guys and up hauls and down hauls, which are all lines you're supposed to have attached to those poles. But when we were setting this up, I was like, all we need is a fore guy to keep the pole from hitting the shrouds and a topping lift to hold the pole up, and that's what we did. After our crossing, I did check with our rigger back in Spain, and he confirmed to me that we should have probably had the after guy, the topping lift, and the downhaul, really just to maintain the shape of the sail better. We probably would have done better, especially in the lighter winds with that. And that probably would have also saved us from bending our whisker pole on the second night.
So that twin headsail setup was perfect. The first week we were doing great speed, and then the wind died, and that was not perfect at all. So we tried to fly our asymmetric spinnaker.
We did, and we flew it successfully.
For 6 hours. Well, if you're going to go up the mast, it's probably better you do it sooner than later.
And then it broke. Actually, the sail didn't break, the halyard broke. It chafed through, and the sail ended up in the water. So the reason we discovered it happened is because on our Beneteau, there's a small ring. It's about this size, and the line goes through, and the idea is to stop chafe from happening with that ring, but in this case, it just rubs and rubs and rubs, and then pop. They're like little guide rings.
Right.
There's a name for them. And I wonder if that's for this.
The ring?
Yeah. It broke. So Sophie came up when that happened, and I said the sail's in the water, and she helped me get the sail out. And then on the video, you probably experienced a bit of swearing happening.
Priority is now.
So what you have not seen in this video is that the first time that I went up, I didn't have the camera because I knew that we needed to deal with the situation at hand. So I helped Ryan pull the spinnaker back on the boat so that it would not be hanging in the water. Then I asked Ryan, is it okay for you if I go get the camera? And you said yes. So I went, got the camera, and in the meantime, the spinnaker fell back in the water, which I did not see at first. Yeah.
Help me. Let me go back in.
Yeah, I know. Careful. No, take it easy. So we had like this huge miscommunication and misunderstanding as to, I didn't understand why you were so upset. I didn't see that the spinnaker was back in the water or partly back in the water. It was not a fun moment, guys.
Well, and on top of it, I knew I was going to have to go to the top of the rig, which Sophie didn't know at that point. And that was also a little stressful for me because I just knew that that was like the next step in the whole process of fixing this.
Sometimes we lose our cool. It is also a moment that we could have excluded from the videos, but...
It was part of the journey.
Yes. It's not a fun part, but you know, these days on social media, we're so used to see ultra polished content that a lot of people forget what reality looks like. And when all of a sudden you show them reality, you get really strong reactions. Like, what? You're not perfect? What can I say? We're just regular people. So yeah, we definitely had this enormous backlash to deal with, especially you.
I did.
Oh.
Thanks, YouTube. We actually had a lot of good comments and supportive comments from people.
Yes, I never banned so many people at once. It was, woo! Okay, so another thing that happened during our crossing is that we had to work really hard at keeping up with the battery charging.
We did. In fact, we put 90 hours on our motor crossing the Atlantic, and of that, over half was just us running the motor in order to charge the batteries. The reason is our autopilot and our nav equipment was using a lot more power than we had anticipated, especially the autopilot, because that first week we were in a lot bigger seas than we were anticipating.
Yes, and a lot bigger than it shows on camera. Guys, don't forget that the seas don't look the same on video than they do in real life.
The first like 2 or 3 days it was quite cloudy, so our solar wasn't really putting in any juice, so we got down in the power count really quick. To top it all off, our alternator was not producing as much power as we had anticipated either, so instead of the 60 or 65 amps we thought it would produce, it was doing maybe like 30 amps. So we were having to run our engine a really long time, and it was super frustrating.
And give the autopilot a break. So we were hand steering 1 or 2 hours every day just so that the autopilot would get a break, we could catch up on the engine. And it was super frustrating because we were hand steering with the engine on. We had this glorious sail, these beautiful conditions, and we were hand steering, which is fun, with the engine on, which is not fun.
So this situation really drove me nuts, especially since I spent so much time on our charging and battery solutions. The last month, I've spent some time and reconfigured how we have our deck solar panels, and I think how I've done it is a lot more useful for us, and it's working pretty well.
We will make a video about it.
And then the second thing that we've done, which I just finished up yesterday, is we've added a high output alternator to the boat. It's really cool. The setup is really cool. It's a little unique, and we've also made a video about that, so stay tuned.
Do you see the little stars in his eyes?
It was a fun project.
He's so excited about it.
Super cool.
That leads us to the next topic that a lot of people commented about, which is the Windvane. Everybody was like, oh, a Windvane will solve your problem.
It's true. A Windvane does solve the problem of the power, the autopilot, and an extra rudder in case we lose ours.
Yes.
The problem is that it takes a lot of space on the transom of the boat. So it's a big it's a big form factor in the transfer of the boat. The wind vanes themselves are quite expensive.
Yeah, I was gonna say, before you place them on the boat, they cost a lot of money.
Yeah. The other thing that we considered after we arrived in the Caribbean was actually how the back of our boat is configured. So we sail with our bimini and our spray hood, and then we have a big arch above it. I think that we would actually have to have the wind vane itself
Way up the
10
arch.
meters in the air just to catch
10
in the
minutes.
10 meters. No, okay, not 10 meters, but maybe like 3 meters. Anyways, it was going to be it's a unique challenge on this boat, so.
Yeah, so it's not a solution for us. It may be a solution for a lot of you guys, but we decided to do it without it. Here's another topic that you guys reacted a lot to, which is our watermaker breaking. Our watermaker didn't break. What was that?
That was the pump again. No, one of the crimps was bad.
Yep, that's what happened.
The crimp is loose.
And people suggested a lot of DIY solutions for crimping a wire without crimping it. I had also thought of those solutions. The thing is though, is that after it happened, Sophie and I evaluated how much water we had on board, and we knew we had enough to drink and to do basic necessities like some short showers and washing the dishes. And also knowing that watermaker uses a lot of current when it's running. So what I was afraid of is there's a lot of amps going through that wire when it's on, that if it wasn't, that DIY solution wasn't good enough, that we could have a lot of heat and potentially fires.
And create a problem much bigger than having to ration water. So in the end, we elected not to do a DIY repair and instead just be a lot more conscious about our water usage, and it worked really well. Now the watermaker is fixed. You redid the crimp, it works great. You even installed a little control panel in the galley, which makes it so much better. I love our watermaker, it's so good. Seawater Pro, awesome watermakers. Super affordable too. All right, now let's talk about the mainsail. A lot of you asked, why did you not hoist the mainsail to stabilize the boat? Because everybody saw that we were rolling a lot. You could see the horizon line moving very, very fast. We were rolling a lot during the first week when the winds were strong, but also during the second week when we had no wind. And we were rolling because we had no wind. And hoisting the mainsail would not have helped that because there was no wind to stabilize the boat with. If anything, the mainsail would have just flogged and the boom would have snapped. So we did not hoist the mainsail for that reason. Okay, another topic that not a lot of you guys watching this video would talk about, but other people, and it's the fact that we crossed the Atlantic in a Beneteau. We had a few comments from people saying, oh, I would never cross the Atlantic in a washing machine, blah, 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 blah. It's so sad because, yes, of course, there will be boats that are much more comfortable than ours to cross the Atlantic in, but we also don't have the budget to buy one of those boats. But it doesn't mean that you can't cross the Atlantic in a production boat. You can cross the Atlantic in any kind of boat. It's just a matter of how much comfort do you want to have when you do ocean sailing. If you look at the ARC statistics, which is like this big Atlantic rally for cruisers, a huge percentage of the boats are production boats. They are Beneteau, Jeannot, Dufour, Hanse, lots and lots of production boats because that's the boat we can afford. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
I like the Atlantic.
That was lame.
I mean, overall with the Atlantic, my personal feeling on it was, like, I struggled with anxiety at the beginning. I struggled with boredom at the end, and in between there was a lot of like ups and downs. There was times where like the views were awesome and you'd see small little birds in the middle of nowhere, like 1,000 miles from shore, and you'd like sit there and you wonder about that.
And we had fun. Like swimming in the middle of the Atlantic was really fun. We had some really good times.
But how I describe it to people, at least how I view it, is I've done a lot of other extreme sports and other extreme things, and usually during those, like 80% of it is suck. So Ironman, most of it suck, and most of the training sucks. But all of that doesn't matter the moment you get to the finish line. And that's how it was with this. So as soon as we saw land and the sun was coming up, like we wanted to get there New Year's Eve. We got there New Year's morning, but that was probably better because the sun came up, and as the sun came up, you could see land. and there was nobody out because they were all hungover and sleeping on their boats. So it was just us and a few other boats coming in, and the smell of the flowers, which I'll never forget. And like it made all of the anxiety and the boredom and the hard work and the stress
and the breakage.
It made it all worth it. It really did. It's just a few hours of like that feeling. It's so cool.
Yeah, I think that we get a lot of comments from people saying that, oh, it's too bad that you guys did not enjoy the process more. We did enjoy the process, but in that process, crossing the Atlantic is a challenge. Nobody likes to be sleep deprived. Nobody likes to deal with breakage at 2 a.m. in the morning. Nobody likes when it's rocking and rolling for days on end and you're so tired and it's so taxing. Nobody likes when there is no wind and your sails are flogging and there is nothing you can do, recovering a spinnaker down a sea. Nobody likes to do that. It's type 2 fun. It's taking on a challenge, knowing that it's going to be hard, but the feeling of accomplishment that you have at the end of it is just so rewarding. And the moment that you feel this, you're like, all right, that was hard. It was so much fun. What do we do next? Guys, I am so happy and I'm also so sad that this is the end of our Atlantic crossing series. I think that we're going to make a bunch of other videos about like certain specific aspects of our crossing, such as the twin headsail setup. I think that you were going to do a more in-depth video about the rigging. I was going to do a more in-depth video about our med kits, which we didn't use. It was great. But yeah, it was such a fun project to work on.
Yeah.
I had such a great time sharing it with you.
You did great with it.
It was, oh, thank you. And yeah, if you feel that we haven't answered all of your questions, leave them in the comment section below. We don't really have great internet at the moment that this video is recorded, so don't be mad if we're not super fast answering. It's just the realities of time in Corona. I hope that you enjoyed this very long debrief. Much love to you. We hope that you are safe, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god!
Oh, that feels good. Oh, that feels so good. Oh, yes! You should come, Ryan. It feels so good. Just take a few steps. Ça fait du bien. Merci, vous aussi.